When you want to sell a company, make it count. When it's
Mhm.
time to do that, let's make it count. And then that means a lot of things. So it's not just walking in and say, I want to sell my company. How much do you think it's worth? Okay, who's going to buy it? That's a nice start lead in. But with that, let me introduce the duo of the day. And while there's a trio to this leg, Brittany is not able to be here today, but it's Brittany, David, and Andrew. So with that, I'm going to ask Andrew to start, David to follow, to give us a little bit of background of each of you, and then roll into Buy, Build, and Advisors and how you see us all working together under this joint venture.
So good morning, Paul. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for today. As you really excited about our joint ventures moving forward. So my name is Andrew Lamb. I'm based out of Houston, Texas, and probably by my accent, you can probably tell I'm not from here, there parts, originally from Dublin, Ireland. My background, 25 years in the corporate world, running global operations. I retired from there about 4.5 years ago, just as the pandemic hit. And I started up my own company. I met with David and Brittany shortly thereafter, and we started working on Buy and Build Advisors. My area of expertise is in operations. I do all of the operational due diligence and transition work for clients, and I'll have an announcement. Well, I'll announce it now. I should have my certificate in acquisition integration management by the end of this week. I'll be fully certified in that as well. So realistically, I'm looking at the operational side of businesses and how to get ready to acquire, how to get ready for exit, and making sure not only the business is ready, but the leaders are ready as well.
David?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Good to see
Share
you
a little
again.
bit, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us back on. You and I had a nice chat a couple of months ago on here, specifically about the acquisition side. But we're really excited that this has evolved into a joint venture with C-Suite Support and continuing our integration into the C-Suite network. I've had the pleasure of meeting Tricia on a couple of occasions, as has Andrew, I believe. We're excited about all of this. So my role initially, my background is both legal and financial. I've been a CFO and consulting CFO, a fractional CFO for a number of years, as well as early in my career, a associate and partner in a law firm, doing mainly complex commercial finance transactions. So I've always been on the numbers side, even in law. And we put together Buy and Build Advisors initially. We were in a community, a mastermind community for small business acquirers. And we found that there was an absence of professional services providers that really understood the deal and understood the business side of what folks were trying to accomplish. And so we came together, Andrew, myself, and Brittany, who comes from the fractional CFO world as well. We realized that the three of us coming together could provide the three legs of the stool to provide a comprehensive buy-side advisory service for folks looking to acquire businesses. So that's how we initially started out, and hence the name Buy and Build Advisors, because it's about buying businesses, making further acquisitions, building those, and then ultimately pulling them together for a successful exit. We've now added the sell side advisory to that, as some of the business we've advised on acquiring have moved on to the stage of strategic growth and preparing for exit. And we're very excited about the partnership with C-Suite Support, because as we have done this, we found a significant need for fractional C-Suite support within the firms that we're advising. Our world is to acquire rather than start from scratch, and so in the nature of that, we've acquired a joint venture and partnered with C-Suite Support in order to provide that service rather than trying to build it all ourselves from scratch. So we think it's a great complement. The C-Suite Support team has a number of clients who are looking to either grow acquisitively or to prepare for exit, which is our sandbox. And we have a number of clients who need fractional C-Suite in order to reach their goals. And so we think it's a great match.
Well, I appreciate the bios from both of you. Now, I've never seen either one of you be this serious for more than a minute since I've known you. So, you've done your due.
There you
Yeah,
go.
let's bring on what these guys need to know who you really are. So I'm going to open that up and go with the acquisitions are like getting a puppy. It seems like fun at first, but there's always cleanup. We're going to have to get this thing lightened up and go from there. So one of the things that we're going to bring in here is that acquisitions is a great way to build a business, but exit's a great way to make money off of that business. So let's talk a little bit about when it's time to sell, make it count. That's where we kind of started out on this thing. And let's go into, when a CEO is thinking about selling his business or in the thick of trying to close one, that's when they find out that they might not be ready. But let's go into what your group already does and that we now come in to help you with.
Let's start with Stephen Covey, right? Let's start with the end in mind. If you have a business, the first thing you should be always planning for is the exit. One of the things we find with business owners is that they're not ready for sale, right? Getting ready for sale is a job in itself. So when we're engaging with prospects and looking at people, one of the big things we find is they're not ready for sale. And that could be the financial numbers. It could be how they're structured. Is it the team? What team do they have in place? Where are they with regards to their customer base? Are they growing? Are they declining? What are the things that they've got? So realistically, you should always have a plan to sell your business. Always. That starts from day one. Even new entrepreneurs that are getting into business, what is the plan to exit? What is that number that's got to be slid across the desk that's appealing to you? What's that number got to be for you to exit the business? As you're building your business, what is the culture you're building, right? So, we have a lot of fun in our team, right? So I know we're serious at the beginning, but one of our cultural points is having fun, right? Have fun, enjoy what you do, right? Because if you're not having fun, it's a chore, right? We build careers, not jobs. So we've got to be having fun in our business. So, but as you're looking at the business, what is the culture you've built within your business? Because when you're selling your business, those cultures have got to match. I've been in too many acquisitions over the years in the corporate world where the cultures just absolutely clashed and were an absolute nightmare. But I've also been involved in companies that the cultures just melded so seamlessly together, and it was beautiful to watch. It was so easy. So as you're looking and getting ready, right, you should always be ready for sale. That's my point, right? Always be ready for sale. Be ready for somebody comes in and offers you this wild check, this wild number that you want. If you're in that point now where you're wanting to get ready for sale, checklist. What are the things that we've got to get ready for that business? How do we make sure that the team is ready for the sale, right? Because if you are the business, what's going to happen to them? And number one asset of a company is its team, right? So how are we going to get them ready for the sale, them ready for the transition? How are we going to get our mindset ready for the transition? We can spend hours on some of the horror stories of people that want to sell the business at the last minute, pull the plug, because they don't know what they're going to do afterwards, right? They have no plans afterwards. I want to go do a little bit of traveling. And what else? What else are you doing? So a big part, and this is what we were talking with Holly yesterday, big part is mindset. Where do we get the right mindset for the individual, for the manager, for the owner, for the team? What's the right mindset for them as they're going through this transition? Because it is emotional, right? David will talk about the factual things, the legal entities, the financial data, but the emotional things that drive the business are powerful, and we got to get ready for that.
No doubt about it. Culture eats strategy for breakfast and throws a chair at lunch if no one's watching.
Absolutely.
You've got to have that team working together. So building that culture throughout the time.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that, in fact, Holly was involved. Holly is our dream manager and does corporate culture. She was involved with a company, this now being 2 years ago. She got involved 3 years ago and started building out Dream Manager and ultimately started working with the senior management team on culture in that company. Well, the private equity company that came in to look at buying them had multiple transactions identical to what Buy and Build Advisors does. So they had several they were looking at, and the executives at one of the meetings that Holly was sitting in said, we're looking at several companies, but what has kept this company on the top of the list is the internal culture and the Dream Manager program, your corporate culture program. And they ended up buying that company for a little over $100 million, 120.
Mhm.
So they contributed what that company made this decision,
Mhm.
and that was to build their culture out and allow their team to bond, build, and in the meantime, they grew exponentially with that culture built.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you've got to understand why do you do what you do, right? Getting the right people in the right seats, empowering them. When I talk to CEOs, the thing I talk to CEOs about is you've got two jobs. Make the vision crystal clear for everybody to understand, and then hire the right people and get out of the way. Get
Exactly.
out of the way, right? So
Get
you
out of
are
the way.
not the company. The biggest challenge I have when I'm working with clients is literally taking the business out of people's heads. The amount of businesses that run from the business owner's head is incredible. Now you've literally got to invest time and effort and energy extracting that information and that knowledge out of that business owner's head. That prolongs two things. One, the work to get it ready for exit, or two, when you do exit, that person's got to stay on because we've got to extract all of that knowledge. So you're not doing yourself a favor if you're not documenting your business, if your business is not systematized, right? So those are some of the things that we work on in getting people ready for and exiting and transitioning the businesses.
Yeah, and blending cultures is like blending families. When you're trying to get that company ready for sale and the company that's looking at buying you,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like dinner at Thanksgiving, awkward, loud, and somebody's going to cry. So you've got to get this thing going, and you've got to have those cultures blend when you go through that transition. Tell me a little bit about what you do to do the CEO painkiller list. What goes on to get a CEO ready for this? And Andrew, I'm going to ask David that question because he's over there just trying to figure out what he's going to say.
He never has that problem, Paul. He
Yeah,
never has that problem.
We're at a loss for words, that's for sure. But yeah, so I think point number one in the CEO painkiller list is if you think you're going to go stick a for sale by owner sign out in the front yard and sell your house this weekend, that's not going to happen. And it's even more so the case with a business. Preparing and being ready for exit is an extensive process. It requires investment. But here's the reality, back to our theme today of when you make that decision to sell, actually make it count. There's two aspects to the value of the business. And ultimately what we're looking for is to maximize the value of the business for the exiting ownership group. One aspect are the external forces. What are the market views trucking companies different than it views software as a service companies. So depending on what industry segment you're in and depending on what's happening in the larger economy, interest rates, economic outlook, all of those things affect kind of largely what the valuation of the company is going to be within a band. But then there's high, middle, and low within that band. And the next phase is completely controllable from within. And it's the stuff that we really have to focus on. We can potentially do some things with which band you end up in. If you've got a component of your business that's software of a service, but a component of it that's professional services, maybe we can help you shape your business to characterize it better as a SaaS business and get higher multiples. But those are rare. The real work is within that band. Are you a lower quartile business? Are you a middle business? Or are you an upper quartile business? And those things have to do with making the business attractive to a buyer.
I was saying absolutely. And that one of the things I'll share with you on that same company we were talking about, you're talking about the bands and specifying that a transactional company is going to be normally a 3 to 5 multiple of EBITDA. A tech driven company is going to be somewhere between 7 and 9 multiple of EBITDA. And a SaaS company can go as high as 12 to 14.
Mm-hmm.
The company we were just talking about that Holly was involved in, part of my efforts in the first side of that was to move them from being transactional to tech driven.
Mm-hmm.
Could the product that they have be moved to a technology driven product for, click, close, move, get it done, rather than people contact walking into an office trying to close a transaction? And we successfully made that change, which took the company from being probably in 50 to 60 million category. Finally, when they found their right buyer, it went to over 120 million, but it took 2.5 years to accomplish that goal.
Right. Yeah. A lot of it will have been if that company didn't have the things like the culture in place that you had worked on, or that Holly had worked on, things like systems and processes in place that Andrew was speaking of, that may have been an 80 instead of 120. So that's really where we're talking about spending that time, that couple or 3 years, is getting you from the 80 to the 120, because all of those are reasonable ranges for a business in that sector. But it depends on how plug and play, how ready to additionally scale and grow the buyer sees the company as being, and that the company has been built to fit the buyer model of buyers in that industry. That's the other thing I think that doesn't get enough credit or enough attention, is it's not just a generic making the company buyer ready.
But I think I'll follow on that point, right? So, when we're saying, as David was saying, when we're getting people ready for sale, it's who are you selling it to? So one of the things as you're looking at selling your business is, who is your target market? Is this a trade buyer? Is it a PE? What are they looking for? So as you're making your business attractive to them, how do you have to set up your business so it is truly attractive for them to buy? Right, as you were saying for Holly, right? You were building it, they were wanting the culture, they were wanting this, that, and the other. They were the ones that selected and saw that and said, that's the perfect business I want to buy, and they go buy it. So it's getting it ready for your sale, right? It's like getting a product ready for your customer, right? Your customers need the following things. They need this solution, and you fix that problem, right, with the solution. It's the same with your business. You've got to build your business so that it is sellable. But as David was saying, who is the right person to sell it to? What are they looking for? And by the way, that data is available.
Absolutely is. And some of the things that they're going to be concerned about, are they able to go in and do a quality of earnings and that the numbers are right? And, if they just lost their CFO, trust me, the company is looking at them as either going to walk away or they're going to send in a forensic accountant to make sure that what the reason is that the CFO just walked away.
Right.
All of these come into play.
Yeah. So having all of those things in place and making sure that you're not only ticking the boxes, but also making sure you've got robust backing behind all of those things, right? It's not, we don't want to see the wallpaper over the cracks, right? Fill the cracks in.
Absolutely. And that, one of the things that a lot of owners come into it, they know they're going to have attorneys. They may not even think that before they get there, but they're going to have attorneys.
Yeah.
And if your lawyer sounds too friendly, assume they've done it before and you're the rookie. You better figure out what you need to do and why these things are that way. Yeah. And particularly the buyer's attorney versus the seller's attorney. Be listening, be prepared, and deal with what they have, because, you're going to have those issues to have to deal with, clean up, and it's all got to be ticked and tied, as the old accounting comment is, before it's done.
Yeah. And I think the other adage is, right, so they push it down the path, right? We'll kick this can down the road, but reality strikes when you are selling the business, because when people come in and do due diligence, they're going to find the holes, they're going to find the problems, right? They're going to highlight it. I mean, we had a client there recently that didn't make some changes to their name after they split. So a single company split into two. And they didn't make any changes in the name. The buyer came along and wanted to do, and under due diligence, we found this potential issue, and we knew that we were going to have to invest in marketing because we're going to have to rebrand, because we don't want to be basically marketing and sending half of our prospects down the street to the other guy. That was a $600,000 cost. Guess what happened to the cost of that business? The valuation, it went down.
Probably $600,000.
More than that. So, right, because there's effort, there's time to go fix that, as well as the investment that was needed. So again, these are things that when you're looking, I mean, kicking the can down the road may seem like the right option at the time, but if you're looking to sell your business, you got to invest to sell. You got to invest in your team, your system, your processes, your structure, so that it is ready to sell, that the buyers that want to buy those types of businesses, they're ready to go buy it, and it becomes easier, right? It's not an easy process, that you've got to make it as easy as possible for that buyer to buy your business.
Well, I know recently we had conversation about a company that Buy and Bill was looking at and trying to put something together with. It was in the food industry.
Mm-hmm.
And looked like a very unique situation, potential franchise situation, looked like a real good property to take out for sale and get a good dollar for it. But you guys, in doing the due diligence, ran into something that they had no idea what the problem was. And that was a lot of their business was takeout business. And so there's ways to check it, and buyers are going to look into these things.
Mm-hmm.
So your standpoint, you looked into it as if you were the buyer,
Mm-hmm.
and found that they had issues that their DoorDash, very high percentage, I don't remember the exact, but it was well over 50% of their DoorDash was a one-time buy.
Yep.
That was indicative that the product that was being received in the home was not the same product that was being prepared and served at the location.
Yep.
So there's a packaging issue.
Yep.
That's the thing that you guys do to go in and get a company ready. Let's fix it before we go out there. And now we don't have that issue to deal with on sale. Can you want to expand upon that one?
Yeah, I mean, we look under every rock, under pebble, every grain of sand. We're looking at it, right? So we're looking at it from not only because, again, what we're looking at as advisors is we're looking at the growth, right? What's the growth model of that business, right? No buyer is going to buy a business for it to continue to deliver the numbers that it's been delivering before. They want to grow it. So we've got to understand what are the growth patterns. We've got to understand, what are the opportunities that this business has got. And working with the buyer, is this their first acquisition? Is this a multiple acquisition they're doing? How is that all going to connect? So we're looking at all of those things when we're looking at these businesses. And when we were looking at the business that you were mentioning, when we started to dig into the marketing aspect of the business. And that's where we started to find some real holes. How they were doing the marketing, what that marketing was generating. That drove us down the next step of, so how are they capturing information, right? And we started to find holes with regards to, repeat business and some of the agreements that they had in place with some of these other vendors, right? The Uber Eats and the things like that. And then we started to get some, and again, we actually visited and got the experience. But then again, some of our team members also started to think, well, hold on, I've had this product. It's great when I'm in the store, but when I've ordered it online, this is the experience I got, when I got it home, and there's a big difference. So that was all starting to come to the fore, and all the red flags started to come up. So those were things that we started to look into to see, is this a viable solution at the end of the day? And what do we need to invest in to get it to where it needs to be? That then came to the conclusion that this right now was probably not the right solution that the buyers wanted to purchase.
Right. And that's the time that if they're willing and they are desirous, they will work with you to take the next steps.
Correct.
To get someone to come in and evaluate. Okay, I have a packaging problem, or I have a product that does not have shelf life situations. How do I fix that? And if I don't fix it, then I don't have a company for sale.
Correct.
So they should be willing to do that.
And it's both sides, right? It's both sides have got to look at it. So it's the buyer side and the seller side, right? So we do get into these negotiations. Right. So, when you're selling the LOI, it's the intent, right? It's the letter of intent, right? You've got to be looking at these things as you're going along. There are some negotiations that then proceed as you're in that process when you start to find these things. That's why you're doing due diligence. That's why we're investigating all the things that we're doing, because we want to make sure you're getting what's written down is what you get. What you see is what you get. So those are the things that we do. And unfortunately, not a lot of people do the right due diligence. And people look at it from a cost perspective. How much is this going to cost us? Well, let me tell you. I'll tell you what the cost is going to be if you don't do it right.
That's right. Multiple of what you thought you were going to pay for it.
Multiples on multiples on multiples, right? Some of the biggest challenges we've got is integration, right? How do you take over the business? Most businesses, can get through the acquisition, can do a deal. But where they really start to falter is in the post-acquisition, taking over the business, right? Making sure that they've got what they say they were buying, right? Making sure that the the sellers are holding up their end of the bargain, right? Doing the things that they said they were going to do. Because I can tell you, a lot of attitudes change when a large check goes across the table and they have the ability to drink Mai Tais on the beach, right? They're not as committed. The other thing we've got to be aware of is that when we're doing integrations, whether it's your first acquisition or you're integrating multiple businesses, there are times where, and a lot of times, where revenues decrease because your eye is taken off the ball. You're interested in integrating, you're not interested in growing the business like you had before. So one of the things that we've got to make sure we've got a plan of is doing a lot of the work up front. And that goes to David's other favorite topic, letting the cat out of the bag. But how do we make sure that we're doing that work ahead of time, people are engaged ahead of time, so that all of a sudden, that the owner is not only just running the business and keeping revenues going, and also now having to get all the paperwork ready for the sale, right? Now he's got 3 jobs he's got to do, not 2 previously, but post-sale, right? There's still a lot of work to do post-sale, right? We do a 90-day transition at the moment, but realistically, a transition is about a 12-month timeline for a small, medium business, if not longer.
Well, one of the things that in the process now, and a lot of these sales have earnouts.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the thing that I've seen in the past, I know you've seen it multiple times, is if you've got a seller note and you've got an earnout situation, then one of 2 things are going to happen. One is you're going to support that post-sale transaction and ensure things stay in place and that the company actually grows and you receive that earnout.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you don't, just like you said a minute ago, revenues can go down.
Right.
And potentially there's clawbacks or offsets or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One of the transactions I had a couple of years ago, completed the sale, everybody happy, but in the discussion with the CEO said, you need to get contracts, things put in place, agreements of some kind for all your key management members. And there was no interest in doing that.
Right.
And within 90 days after the sale of that company for a lot of money, all of their management team left.
Yep.
Because of the culture change, the company change, the drive change. The new company coming in is wanting, as you said earlier, improvement. Well, if you don't have your management team in place, that's going to be tough. But if you put so much stress on the new management team to get those growth areas going, and you don't compensate them properly for it, or you don't consider compensation or golden handcuffs or something to make it worth their while to stay, you lose all that travel knowledge.
Yeah.
So if you've got burnout, you better make a plan of how do you keep your people in place? How do they flourish under the new regime, the new situation? How do they make it better lives for themselves going forward? If you don't, you're not going to have that transition work well.
Right.
And I'm back
Oh, he's
home,
back.
I think, but I'm leaving my
Yes, you are.
camera off to save some bandwidth. That's one, Andrew, I heard him allude to my favorite saying about letting the cat out of the bag. I think in order to properly prepare a business for exit, the owner or the CEO absolutely must engage their management team in the process in advance of the sale. Every deal that we have worked on the buy side, where the seller has been absolutely adamant that everything be kept ultra top secret and only they are involved, that's where the cat out of the bag phrase comes. What happens is about anywhere between 2 weeks and a month prior to the closing, the owner starts doing all of these absolutely bizarre things that they have never done before, like asking for inventory updates and questioning vendor concentration and double and triple checking the benefits package and things like that. They think they're being really clever and coming in and doing it after hours or whatever, but there's these strange closed door meetings that were never happening before. Everybody knows something is up, but they don't know what. And so what I've taken to saying is, look, folks, you have to let the cat out of the bag, because having a cat running around loose in the office is far preferable to everyone wondering why there's a screaming cat in a bag under the owner's desk, because everybody is distracted by the screaming cat in the bag. and they don't know why the cat is screaming or why there's even a cat under the owner's desk, but they know that something is there, and they have it's just, it becomes a disaster zone. Everybody's attention is diverted. Everybody is confused about what's going on. Now, I guess the plus side of that is when we come in and we have, Andrew and his team have put together a masterfully designed bespoke communication strategy for this acquirer. And we come in and we basically finally let the cat out of the bag and calm the cat down, and everybody can kind of pet the cat and appreciate the fact that we now have an office cat. But it would have been a whole lot nicer if we didn't have the screaming cat to begin with.
Yeah. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. I mean, and again, I think that the biggest challenge that I've seen is that because they're working on other things and they're distracted, you can tell sales go down. Customers are not being looked after, right? So this screaming cat is causing absolute chaos, not only in the office, but on the books as well. Now you've got to reverse that. You've got to now bring that in. So one of the things in the integration management training that I've just completed, and they talk very much around making sure that you actually have an integration team. There has to be a team that's responsible and accountable and work streams for doing the work in the specific areas. The worst person for doing an integration is the CEO. The worst person. So you've got to engage your team. You've got to bring your team into the conversation as early as possible to help facilitate that, to make it an easier transition and an easier integration. And by the way, just another point on integration. As you're doing acquisitions and doing multiple acquisitions, if you've got an integration team that's doing these integrations for you, when you get to the point where you're going to sell this roll-up of a business and you've got an integration team, that's actually seen as an extremely valuable asset in your organization, because now you can redirect that integration team to be an integration into the new acquirer. And I think, David, you actually saw when you did your training, it literally said it'll add an extra point onto the multiplier if you have your integration team. So if you've got a roll up and you've got an integration team and an acquirer like a PE firm or somebody comes in and wants to acquire that company, and they pivot their resources, their focus into now being the acquired, that's a very desirable thing for larger acquisitions. Correct, David?
Absolutely. And even, on the smaller side, we talk about, and that's really kind of I think a great point to kind of what we do in larger PE firms and in larger companies. It's justifiable to have an in-house M&A team. But in the smaller, if you're preparing to exit the business and it's a single transaction, or you're in a growth mode, but you want to make 2, 3, 4 acquisitions, you're a lower middle market company, building out a full-blown in-house M&A team may not be the wisest investment for you. And that's where, the partnership between C-suite support and ourselves can come in that we essentially are the outsourced M&A department for the company that can do those. And that's where I think we're very unique, in that we have folks like Andrew that really are focused on the integration and managing the integration process. We've got the fractional CFO team that will expand to be a fractional C-suite team, and we've got the legal team that understands how to document the transaction and diligence the transaction.
And if we could, we're going to be going to Q&A here in just a few minutes here, so I want to make sure that we get a couple of things in. I'd like to wrap our initial conversations here into what does the joint venture with BBA and C-suite support provide for potential CEO sales or acquisitions in the future. Andrew, if you'd like to start, David, and we'll wrap that and then go into Q&A.
I mean, it gives you basically a one-stop shop, right? You're getting the experience, you're getting the knowledge of all aspects of both getting ready for sale, acquiring companies, as well as the transitional services, right? And the ongoing services. This gives us a one-stop shop where all of those are being brought together. All of that knowledge is shared. When you're looking at the teams and our wealth of knowledge in all of these different areas, now you're bringing more knowledge, more capabilities, more understanding from different aspects, and you get a richer solution. So that's what I see from our teams as we start to this joint venture. You're getting a more richer knowledge. You're getting a more diverse knowledge. You're going to get more insights and more capabilities from one place, from a trusted source at the end of the day. That's what you're going to get. And I think from a CEO, having that trusted source, that ability to go to one place and ask and get that information, that knowledge, that direction is absolutely critical and invaluable. Now you don't have to run around to 3 or 4 different places and then start integrating those ideas. You get one.
All right,
Yeah,
David?
and I think second to that, particularly on the sell side, which is mainly been a big chunk of our focus today, I think bringing in BBA with our buy side experience will make a world of difference from the average exit advisor out there who's working constantly on the sell side. We bring the capability to look at the business from a buyer's lens, and to fully vet and pre-diligence that business along with the executive team in order to maximize the value to what buyers are looking for. The sell-side advisors, not to knock sell-side advisors, they do a great job, but I think they tend to get a little bit myopically focused on the sell side and forget that in order to maximize the sale, you actually have a buyer. And so looking at the deal from the buy side and pre-diligencing the deal from a buyer lens is going to allow a selling CEO or a selling business owner to ultimately maximize their value and make it count when they sell.
All right, and I'm going to wrap some of that with how I see all of this pulling together, and that, as Tricia knows, we have the CEO Alliance Council here in Dallas. We're a part of the Finance Council with CJ Davison, and quite honestly, I see the experience that the C-suite team brings to the table is doing a lot of grunt work. We're in there, we're helping with the companies, but we're also visionaries helping those companies find their own vision. Most of my time this week has been working with CEOs, or for the last week, working with CEOs on revenue streams, not whether their books are right or their gap is good or whatever. All of that's preempted. We do that to start with, and a good CFO is looking for how to build a business. So we bring that atmosphere, but along with that, and now this is where it brings in C-Suite Network involved in this total transaction, as C-Suite Alliance has 26 potential members of it that are companies like C-Suite Support. We bring in marketing, we bring in operations, we bring in technology, et cetera. And quite honestly, I see this merger being something that Tricia, that we want to be talking about with you. How do we build out a program with C-Suite Network that we are your merger acquisition development team for everything financial that is not necessarily CJ Davison's area. He's in Finance Council for building out everything of the nature for C-Suite Support and C-Suite Network Finance Council. But inside that are merger acquisitions and the types of things we do. So that's one of the things we want to sit down and talk about next week when you venture your world travels into Dallas to talk about and start planting that seed of how does that work for us expanding through C-Suite Network in a more proactive manner in taking that forward.
It's very exciting, Paul and Andrew and David. As I was listening to everything you were sharing, I think that there are a lot of CEOs, a lot of owners of businesses who think, oh, yeah, I know all of that. And the fact of the matter is the Tyson quote of everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face really comes to mind. This is certainly one of those scenarios where theory is simply useless when it comes to actually going through it when it's yourself. And I absolutely love where you're coming from, what it means, and the fact that as owners in our businesses, we don't have to be going there alone without all of that expertise and knowledge of what's normal, what's not normal. Paul, I'm thinking about the one hero leader we were with recently who, had things been different, i.e., she had not traveled to the Hero Club Summit and sweated it out alone, chances are her deal and her acquisition would not have gone through. but she was with us, and the counsel that you and a few others of us were able to give her to stay steady, to understand, like, you know, she could lead this through to success. That's just the experience, right? That's just the
It is.
time and experience and
Yeah.
having been through it. And I just think ultimately you cannot underestimate the value of that. It's just
Yeah. I mean,
fantastic.
on your point, Tricia, I mean, how many business owners actually sell a business multiple times in their life? Not many.
No.
Most business owners sell their business once, and that's their only experience is doing that, right? So having experience and having people around that this is what they do every single day of the week. We know all the nooks and crannies, and we know all the nuances that need to be looked at. You know, bring advisors in to do that. They've got the experience, they've got the knowledge. Don't try and learn it yourself, because it will cost you more doing it that way.
Yes. And you have no idea the cost that you're avoiding getting the right partner in place to take care of that for you. I was with an incredible woman yesterday who was introduced by our chief connector, Drew Taylor, who happens to be sitting right next to me in the office. And she owned over 50 businesses. I don't think she'd even joke about not having that guidance and support through the process.
Mhm.
And because the other thing is, even if you have built more than one business, you know, over the course of your career, you've been burned enough times. And that's the thing that people don't talk about either. You're supposed to be ashamed, embarrassed, or you're legally bound not to say anything about things that go badly, the deals that go wrong. And the fact of the matter is, you know, having the transparency to be able to share those things here in C-suite, and specifically Hero Club for our owners, that's so incredibly powerful, because all of those potholes are there. And you just happen to have seen so many of them that you can help us avoid as many of them as humanly possible. And
Yeah.
that's invaluable.
Yeah, it's like that advert. We know a thing or two because we've seen everything.
Exactly.
The car
The
in the
good, bad, and
roof.
the ugly. You know, one question I did have is, we have a lot of, especially in our Hero Club, values-based leaders who want the people who've served with them to scale their businesses. They want to see them successful. They don't want to be the selfish owner that says, yeah, I'm done. I'll take everything and good luck with the new ownership. But we don't care who they are. It's the opposite. Deeply concerned and want to make sure they have the right partner, the right fit, you know, all of those kinds of things. And also the consideration of an ESOP. And I wondered what your best advice is, what your thoughts are around that, and when that's the right decision, and some things to watch out for with that.
Let David answer that one.
Yeah, you know, I think ESOPs can be a really, really powerful tool in the right context. It's kind of like the analogy I use about debt financing. You know, I always say, look, there's, you know, a fine quality steak knife is really important, but you want to make sure that you don't give it to a 2-year-old to eat a peanut butter sandwich. But you know, when you're at Morton's and you're having the Wagyu ribeye, then it's really good to have that steak knife. So it's you know, the ESOP is a tool that can be used. With one of our clients that we're working very closely with, it's probably our preferred exit strategy, because the industry they're in, the market doesn't really like. They're in the construction industry, and it's a very volatile industry, and it's not prone to long-term recurring revenue models. And so the market tends to punish it. So an ESOP may be the maximum exit opportunity.
All right. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left here. I'm going to ask Jason, do you have any questions?
I've been questioning them for months. I think we're probably pretty good.
Did you get any answers though, Jason? That's the question.
Yeah, I got good ones. Yeah, we've been talking and working with David and Andrew's been a pure joy and delight. And we go back and forth and do a lot of ribbing. It's definitely a fun culture, and we enjoy it. And I learn more and more every day about the my follicle impairment on myself, and but I get over it. I think probably just real quick, I think our team might want to know, what are they going to see from this integration? What changes is going to be in it for them? I believe we're keeping the C-suite name, but they're just curious.
Well, as the opportunity for more clients and more involvement with clients.
Mhm.
Ultimately, I also see the opportunity for advancing to additional positions.
Mhm.
You know, both Gary and Brian have been in CFO positions in the past and moving to higher compensation, more compensation. that's probably an initial viewpoint that they look and want to have. Also, the variety that brings into the life that they have. They have the choice if they want to work more hours or not, but most of them do. They're all self-supporting situations. So I think that's the primary. We want to make sure that we're able to take care of families and start building a legacy in our own families, both economically and emotionally. And that's what I'm seeing this going forward with. I see it as only a positive in the future. And as Jason just mentioned, we will continue to go forward under the umbrella of C-suite support, and we will be bringing in all of the other verticals that we have in our C-suite alliance of helping companies with their transitions. So,
Yeah, I mean, we're also working on our website. We'll probably be adding additional revenue streams, other C-suite related offerings to the fractional umbrella that we currently have, COO, CRO, you name it. And if there's something we can't provide, then we're going to develop we already have a pretty good, I think, partner network, but we'll be expanding that.
and Tricia, you got a wrap and you got a minute.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Andrew, David, Paul, as always, just absolutely incredible conversation.